Welcome to part two of Hometown's Community Conversation. My name is Fred Honnold, host for this event. In our first part, we are focusing in this community conversation for Summit and all our surrounding neighborhoods and towns, of which we get out to over 30, over a population of 600,000. We're focusing on education. And the purpose of this conversation that we're having is to invite you in to really understand and think about what's going on in your respective towns and ours. And we have here, just so you know, in terms of the people on our roundtable, four altogether, George Lucas, Beth Breyer, welcome both.
Thank you very much, Fred.
And Lisa Allen and Dave Baumgart.
Thank you,
welcome. In our first session, we were more pronounced and specific about the introductions, but simply say this: we are bipartisan represented. I, for one, am affiliated with neither party, but it's really not about parties, it's about the citizens and what's in the best interest of you and your families and friends. So when we finished off the last portion, we were talking about how you need to become more involved, and we here at Hometown, over the years, both broadcast live the Summit Council meetings, we do the Millburn Township Committee meetings, as well as the Millburn Board of Ed, and we finished off talking about the importance and value of, in a busy community, if we could start showcasing Summit's Board of Ed.
If in fact the school system is the jewel of the city, then it makes sense to have the transparency along with that. And that's why I would really like to see the Board of Education meetings, both the workshop meetings and the more public meetings. They're both public, but the other one is more general, to be broadcast live. And I think that Channel 36 would reach a lot more people. And we were talking about that, Lisa, earlier. There's a whole sector of people that do not have children in the school district, and that's 75% of the people here. So, you know, it's important to really show the community as much as we can, and I think that's the most important thing that we can do.
I agree.
Yeah.
That was a really great point.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, it's not just the parents, it's the community as a whole.
So in effect, with the households in Summit, 75% are not sending their children through school, though they may have, as I have, and 25% currently are sending children through school. And the total count of students in school?
It's 4,100. You know, it's an interesting point. We were just talking about this earlier. You had a big movement between 2001 and 2015 of 900 to maybe 1,000 students as far as increase in total students from 3,100 to 4,100, or very close. At the same time, the population of Summit stayed the same.
Okay.
So I think you see a process.
And George, on that, you took us through at the break over the years how Summit's population has always been 22,000.
It's been 22,000 in 1980, and something that for some reason I looked up, and it's 22,000 today. So you saw an inflection point in many people's lives in 2007, 8, 9, and I think you saw an increase that was observable of people sending their kids to the Summit Public Schools, and Summit Public Schools have done very well for them.
Beth, in your thoughts as we broke here, we're all getting educated together.
Absolutely.
And a lot of what we've talked about in preparation and at the break?
Well, first of all, I'm surprised to learn 75% of the households here do not have children in the public schools, and yet the education budget is the majority of what we are paying in taxes. So I think that educating everyone in this community, and to your point, George, that everyone needs to be able to participate, or there needs to be a transparent process, as you had mentioned, Lisa. This is very important for every state, and the stakeholders are every resident in this community.
That's well said. And as you get more specifically into the organizations, what are some of the organizations that are the stakeholders, the groups that are involved in terms of speaking to issues?
Within the school, you mean?
Within the school and the broader community. For example, we have the PTO organization.
Yeah, I was going to say, so in the school, there's the PTO, there's Speak Up Summit.
And there's a PTO organization per school, per grammar school, per middle school, per high school, right?
Yes, yeah. And then there's also SEF. They do a
Summit
lot
Educational Foundation?
Yeah.
Right.
So,
You said
I don't
Speak
know.
Up Summit is an independent organization that looks to advocate on behalf of the schools, I believe.
right.
We have Summit Educational Foundation, which I believe looks to, through foundation grants, fund
Special projects, I
special
believe.
projects that are new and one time.
Yeah.
And that are teachers and principals, and in fact, anybody in the community can put in a grant for what they think is important. And this has been an extraordinary.
Anybody in the community?
Correct.
Okay, I did not know that.
So this is not just limited to teachers, and though most of the grant requests have come from teachers and not enough from principals and other members of the community, this is a wonderful organization that we have, the SEF, Summit Education Foundation. I mean, the fact that they've added so much to our budget over the years has been a real relief to the taxpayer. That's something they should know about as well. The contributions and the way that community is given to Summit Education Foundation has really helped, I think, the school district over the last 6-7 years.
And I don't have the number.
Well, and then Fred, let's not forget Summit Boosters Association from the athletic side, because
Right.
you know, folks have special interest, and boy, I
Absolutely.
tell you, athletics is a special interest, and so I think the Summit Boosters do a grand job of fundraising and contributing. I think, George, you mentioned that there's now a bowling team, and
Now
possibly
there's now a girls gymnastic team.
girls
I think the bowling
gymnastic
team
team.
was basically done away with from
Okay.
the last budget.
Okay.
That when I looked it over, and basically what took its place was the girls gymnastic team,
Okay.
about the same amount of
Yeah.
money for
And there
each.
was always a issue with the hockey team. You know, parents paid most of it, and then the school added into it. And I'm not sure where it stands now, but the Summit Boosters Association does a nice job.
They've done great work, and the parents have done a huge amount of contributions themselves. The sailing club, for example,
Yeah.
the sailing team, which has done amazingly well throughout the state. So there's a lot of activities and athletics and music that would be, you know, important for this community to know. Well, we were just talking again about the Mary Poppins Summit musical. These are near Broadway productions, near Broadway-like productions, and you know, you can't get a ticket anymore. By the way, you know, 5 years ago, you know, you go up there, you know, right before the show, and you get a ticket. You can't do that anymore. So it's, you know, it's been recognized as well. So it's wonderful.
This is actually interesting, though. Summit Educational Foundation, which is privately funded, somebody could say, for example, I want to see Summit get more specialized in terms of guidance in the junior and senior year for admission into college, and that might fund an additional person who then could get out and work us more among colleges.
It was just what happened about 4 years ago. The Summit Educational Foundation contributed a good amount of money to bring in a new counselor who would focus on the college aspect of the student in high school. And she has done a remarkable job. But I will tell you that that took a lot of debate amongst the board to be able to take over that Summit Educational Foundation grant going forward.
Interesting.
So there was a lot of debate about that, and I think it's the counseling area has improved immensely because of that. You need somebody who can pick up the phone and talk to, whether it's University of Oklahoma or Stanford or you know, Boston College, and say, you know what, you know, John has done a really good job. I know he's on the waiting list. Let's take another look. And those are important things to
Added
do.
value to that.
This is what the private schools do. We should be doing that as well.
Right.
And I saw recently that if you go onto the Summit Board of Ed website, you can now find the pictures of all the members on the Board of Ed and their email addresses. So I think people need to speak up and speak out as well.
Well, and I was going to ask, in terms of the counselor too, understanding the trends in the way that school is going, right? I would assume, you were talking about the ACT and SAT, and our school's going to go away from that over the next 10 years.
Which seems to be the trend. If
Right.
you look at some of the institutes of higher learning, sure.
Yeah, so does the counselor know that? Like, do they stay on top of that, or, you know?
This counselor, the counselors are very, very updated. That's been my experience. They're very right on the edge of what's happening there.
Yeah, certain schools will actually invite counselors that are responsible. For example, the U.S. Navy Academy, they'll invite whatever counselor specializes in academies, military academies, to come to a seminar, you know, at Annapolis or at West Point or in Colorado Springs, and learn more about the academy and the admission process. So I'm not sure if other private schools do that, but I know the academies do it to educate and I'm not sure who in Summit. At Summit High School might do that, but
But
Yeah.
it sounds very important then that this funding from SEF, which led to hiring
And
this
led
guidance
to
counselor, is
hiring, and in fact,
extremely
a
important.
permanent position.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But-
now that it's a permanent position, is it funded like through SEF, or is it's now funded? So the schools were able then to see the value of that.
like a
Correct.
one-year grant, and then
Right, that's how it started. A lot of these SEF, I don't want to speak for the SEF, I don't want them to be upset with me, but a lot of what they're doing now is they're making the grants and accepting the grants and talking about them, and then they're monitoring them and seeing how does that grant work? Does the early, you know, does the homework class after-school work? Do those new chairs that we bought that are more comfortable with the students, are they really helping? So they monitor it, I think, and so they're a good steward of the money, and in fact the endowment that's been created there.
Was there another point here, and then I wanted to get into the process? Derby?
I was just going to actually say just one really quick thing is I know that we just went through the budget, and my experience, because I'm not at the high school yet, but what I've been experiencing at Franklin is we have expanded our services, and I know that some of it's funded through the parents, but we do a ton of enrichment, and I feel like the schools are doing a bang-up job really engaging the kids in a very young age, and parents feeling like we're getting exposure to programs that otherwise wouldn't be there. So just a little
That's good to hear.
bit of information.
Yeah,
on
I
that.
think the more parents get involved, until they get to be helicopter parents.
There's a fine line
Yeah,
there,
There
George.
is a line, and it's when you start getting into the helicopter, I think that, and teachers I think would agree with that, I think that's really critical that they get involved into what's going on in the schools.
Clearly, the consensus is here is in Summit and in our area school systems, as you see, as we feel it, as we see it from the inside, and we look at various state metrics published, we easily have among the best school systems. And I think our dialogue around how do we make the best even a little bit better by having a broader involvement of stakeholders. We talked earlier about the Board of School Estimates. The budget comes up through an operations committee. The Board of School Estimates now sits, and you have the mayor with 2 people from Summit Council and 2 people from the Board of Ed. Now,
5 people.
from the Board of Ed side, and then Dave will get to you from the City Council side. From the Board of Ed side, how are those 2 representatives chosen that sit as part of this group of 5?
Good question. It's traditionally been the president of the board and the head of the operations committee.
Okay.
And they sit there and they vote, and pretty much we know what the vote's going to be on March 29th. And we've had, over the years, times when the Board of School Estimate has asked the board to go back and look at their numbers more carefully.
And so it's really by the function of position, the president, which you typically arrive at in your 6 of 2 3-year terms.
Correct.
And the operations person, is that somebody that basically advances into that position?
Usually the committee heads are appointed by the president.
Okay.
And what they like to see on longer term Board of Education members is that they all spend some time on each committee.
Gotcha.
So they all will head up a committee before they become the president.
All right, so there's
They're all
a certain
knowledgeable.
route there.
Yeah.
What
And is
was
it
that, Beth?
general-
No, they're all knowledgeable, which is
Yes.
very important.
And it's generally 6 years, is that?
3-year terms,
Okay.
and again, appointed at the discretion of the mayor.
Okay.
And so nobody should think that they're going to have a 6-year term. If in fact it's a decision that is a very important decision that the mayor makes. Traditionally, again, people who've been there 3 years who are encouraged to stay another 3 years.
I would think there's a steep learning curve,
Very steep.
right? So by that end of that 3rd year, you really want to hold on to that intellectual capital,
You know, that's a very good point.
right?
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think that helps. I think it's a historical memory of what you've done and what's been there. I think that's important.
And we have, to the best of my recollection, 5 grammar schools in Summit,
Yep.
a middle school, a high school. There's 7 members on the board.
Correct.
And my understanding is informally, there's looking to be drawn at least 1 member of the board from each of those
Yes.
school representatives,
Correct.
if you will.
So yes, every one of the elementary school districts: Franklin, Brayton, Jefferson,
Washington, no.
Washington, and one of mine went to.
Lincoln? Lincoln Hubbard?
Lincoln Hubbard.
Right.
That's the effort that's made. I'm not sure it's always been successful. You can't.
Right.
There's times when you're not people. If you go to Brayton or to Franklin or to Jefferson, you can't find the person or the person that you want. Just can't do it.
Right.
So it's not the easiest thing in the world to get 5 from the 5 different board members.
So that, in a way, is how the different schools get represented, and every school has its own PTO,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And then I understand the PTOs then meet together as a group of the whole as well.
That's right, and they
That's
meet
vibrant.
once a month with the superintendent as
Oh, do they?
well.
All right.
Yep,
Okay.
they meet once a month at the middle school. I think that's still the tradition, that they meet once a month and they discuss their issues, and it's a very good back. The president of the school board, the superintendent, and all the PTO heads.
Very
meet.
nice.
And it's a very good discussion, and we have some very talented heads of PTOs that are intellectually very powerful. I've noticed over the years, so
Yeah.
It's very
it's
fortunate.
good. Yeah.
And in Franklin, they have a monthly meeting. The PTO holds a monthly meeting for the parents. So Yeah.
So this group of 5, Board of School Estimates, the BOSC then, has 2 representatives from Summit Council.
Correct.
How are
Pretty
they
much
chosen?
mirrors. It's usually the council president and the council person chairing finance are usually the two that the council president at the beginning of the year names to the Board of School Estimate. So it could be others, but that's usually who's named. But I wanted to make a point also to remind that we are a Type 1 school district, and we are in the minority in the state. Most are not formed like we are formed. Most of the school districts in the state elect their Board of Ed members at the ballot box. And then the budget that's developed by the Board of Ed goes to a vote to the
Referendum.
entire public, referendum. And we don't do that. So the power is with, like you said, the power is with the mayor to appoint, and then the Board of School Estimate to set the budget without an election. So it's more important to make sure that our residents, constituents, are aware of what goes into it, the thoughts and why the budget is constructed as it is. They don't get to vote on it. So they, the understanding
point.
kind of compensates for that.
I think it's a very, very small minority who are appointed within the state. I think something.
Oh,
I'm
yes. Oh,
guessing
yeah.
it's 98% have
Oh.
elections. It's a very high
Yes.
percentage.
Yes.
And it's a very small percentage that are appointed by the board. So when you have an election, like I think they had Summit on their budget. I mean, they had 70%. Their referendum, 70% approved it, and 30% said that we don't want that. So that's a high percentage saying they don't want it.
Yeah, we've had a couple of referendums over the years to go back to the
An
type
elected
2.
board?
Yeah, to an elected board, and yeah.
Seems
has-
like it
have
happens
been
every 10 or
defeated.
15 years, right?
Do you think that'll ever be the case, Dave?
Pardon?
Do you think that will be the case at some point, that it will shift?
I don't see it. It could, but I don't see it in the conversations and what I hear in the community, that there's a strong feeling that, no, we need to vote the budget. I don't see it.
I know when I moved into Summit in the late 80s, there was a petition afoot, and people were downtown, and you sign the petition,
Yes.
that's what gets it on
Yes,
for a ballot
X number
referendum.
of signatures.
I do know, too, in other towns where they do have elected boards, it can be pretty bruising. Because those people, when I've talked to them about what goes on in Summit, they said, we wish we had that in our town, because I guess the bruising that occurs then follows them into their time on the board. And different constituencies get very active. So each of these is
An
a
interesting
trade-off, if
perspective.
you will,
Mhm.
isn't it?
Yeah. I was just going to ask if Chatham or Milburn have elected boards. Yeah, they do.
No.
They do.
Milburn certainly.
Oh, Milburn, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The 18-year-old, yeah.
Now, as we've talked through the Board of School Estimates, what's interesting is, and this is how we're looking to take our collective conversation here, things happen at a larger contextual level as to what guides. So we'll be talking state, we'll be talking federal at our roundtables, and then we'll get into the micro as you get into your particular interviews. But as you think about the issue around revaluation, in terms of the total town. This is a fascinating one because what I understand is that if the school budget or any budget line item is below a certain percent of the total town value on the books, and we'll go into it a little more deeply in a moment, automatically the Board of School Estimates is the final say. However, when a certain line item exceeds the percent of how the town is valued, then it goes to the city council as the final. Now, David, you sat on the city council side, so what I understand, and guide me here with the specifics and the percentages, and George, from your background, please chime in. But I understand, for example, Summit property has not been revalued in a few decades.
1994.
1994, okay. I
The
can rely
last.
on you to get, okay, 19, thank you.
Yeah.
And so here we're coming up, well, we're over 20 years. And since that time, and I'll just throw out a general number, let's say if all of Summit was sold off, which it will not be, but let's say all the houses and all downtown was sold off. If it was sold off at a market price today of $6 billion, but because the town has not been revalued over 22 years at this point, if on the books it appears that the value of Summit is $3 billion, then the way any budget line item, such as the Board of Ed, which is now 66 million, if it goes over a certain percentage threshold of how we're valued, the responsibility automatically defers to the council.
Correct.
So far, so good?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, there is a state statute, and I can't name the title, But we could look at that for a future, or George and Lisa could look at that for a future discussion. But there is a state statute that allows for the fact that when the school budget exceeds a certain percentage of the valuation, of the assessed valuation, then it must go on from the Board of School estimate to the council. So the council has the last bite.
And didn't that occur a few years ago?
It did
David?
occur. I think it occurred maybe in 2011.
2011. In fact, I was on the
2011.
Board of School estimate during that time, as were you, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, the result of that, there was a lot of apprehension and commotion and all because it had not been done in past years. It could have been done, but it just didn't get raised up, so to speak, as an issue. But quite frankly, at the end of the day, as I remember, the council might have cut the Board of Ed budget $180,000.
It was about $310,000.
But was it? Yeah, it wasn't a significant amount, but I think it was more on how the money was being up a certain program versus let's just cut dollars. I mean, it had to be referenced to a particular budget line item.
Right.
Sure.
Do you notice how
Right.
quickly we came back to you guys?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's still there, and it could be a reason to revalue. Personally, I don't think it's a significant reason. I mean, different council persons have advocated for a revaluation. Tom Getzendaner comes to mind because he was consistent. A revaluation, probably is going to cost $2 million and take 12 to 18 months to do it as the team, as a contract team comes in. They always say historically that a third of the property owners will be delighted that their reevaluation goes down. A third will be upset because it goes up. And a third are going to be neutral because nothing has changed. So you're going to have some happy people and some unhappy people. And the bottom line is the revaluation at that time doesn't bring any more money into the city.
It's neutral.
It's neutral.
Yeah.
It's neutral in terms of its funding. But in fairness, it should be done.
So it just reapportions?
Yes.
So for example, you have a street that maybe over the years, people who've moved out and other streets have had knockdowns, build-ups, and are much more valued, but maybe one neighborhood or street is paying more than the proportional share based on market value than another. And so it's just basically reshifting. And that even happens with business and residential, doesn't it? Like the business district might be valued a little bit less and the dollars will shift over to the residential side. So just to push that example, this is again an illustrative example without the specific numbers, but let's say a revaluation did take place and Summit now goes from a total value of $3 billion on the books up to $6 billion. So the value that we have is equivalent to the market value. The $66 million of the school budget then drops below the percentage where it would kick over to the city council.
1.5.
1.5 is it? Okay.
Yeah,
So
that's the rateable.
1.5 is the number.
Yep.
So really, if we have, again, using my illustration, $3 billion, that 66 would go over the 1.5. You move it to $6 billion, it drops below that, and then the final decision is made at the Board of School
Yep.
Estimates.
Yep.
Okay?
Yeah.
Well put.
And it gets back to the whole bit of the fact that we're an appointed board, and we talk about how monies are apportioned, and if the die's already cast, what voice does the citizen and taxpayer have if they're not truly involved prior to?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. That was a conversation stopper, wasn't it?
But yeah, let me ask you a quick question because they went through a bunch of hearings though. So the Board of Ed, they had their first meeting where the public came and spoke, and then March 7th they had another meeting where the public could come out and speak again. So even if you drop below that 1.5% rateable, the public would still have access, right?
Absolutely.
So okay. So
Absolutely. Look, it's about observable data. And that's what these people and all of us have to continue to see. And it's out there if you ask for it. And I think it's important that, I guess we heard, I wasn't at that board meeting, but there were some good conversations there about enough people thinking that maybe the Board of Education wasn't spending enough. Maybe some of the programs that they cut or reduced shouldn't have been, whether it's counseling or certain parts of the teacher assistants should not have been cut. When I look at what was cut, I actually was surprised at how little was done. Because within a budget, it's not so much where the budget is as far as increases. To me, the most important thing a Board of Education can do is get into the weeds and reallocate within the budget. Things are changing so dramatically in our time, whether it's technology or, and we talked about this before, or or videos, video learning, which the Khan Academy has done an amazing job, and many people are talking about maybe students should take the class at home through video and do their homework in school with the teacher. It's kind of a whole reversal thing. So again, I think the reallocation of the budget can really help the taxpayer if in fact that's done very carefully.
These are all excellent points. It's where the dollars are spent.
Right.
And given that technology is shifting society so abruptly from downtown to online, online learning, maybe there's far more efficient and effective ways for our people to accelerate learning.
Here's what I know. I know millennials are changing the world dramatically, and any millennial will tell you that they'd rather go to the dentist's office and get a cavity filled than go into a bank branch and do any kind of business.
You're right, yeah.
Just to George's point, I have always been disappointed to the number of public that come to Board of Ed meetings and come to council meetings. I mean, minuscule. I mean, very few. And so that's why this is so important, is getting information out to the public and at least have them have the opportunity to watch it on hometown TV. Because it's really, people are busy.
It may not be
People are
apathy,
busy.
it may just be
This is a
schedules, is what
commuting
you're
town,
saying.
right? It's a schedule thing, and so, bless them if they come to the meetings, but typically they can't. So it's more important to
And
get
I'll
this
say the
word
council
out.
meetings, they're watching them at home.
And they could with the Board of Ed if that changes.
Right.
You're exactly right. Yeah, they're watching them at home. Or if, and what's always good is when the issue comes up that they have an opinion on, all of a sudden the door opens and that
The
and
floodgates
those
open.
persons come in to speak right to, and that's okay. Speak
Great.
right to that topic because
Yeah.
they were home watching until then. Who knows what? but,
And they
you know.
drive over and they
Yeah,
arrive for that
just in
moment.
time.
Yeah. Well, listen, we clearly have a lot to talk about, a lot more. So thank you for the participation. Our closing minutes, I want to get your thoughts as to what you've learned in our discussion. And then both of you will go off as our co-hosts for a community conversation and interview what is his official title, Lou Pepe?
Lou Pepe is the Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Okay?
That is his official title, and he well deserves it, by the way.
And we'll look to get, I understand there's great reviews on his performance of what he's done.
I think he's transformed the district.
That's
frankly.
powerful.
I think he's transformed the district.
So we'll look to go
Says
through
a
those
lot.
line
we-
items.
Look, and I think that if I was to get anything from the discussion that you led, Fred, it's
Please.
we don't have all the answers. We need to get the questions so we can get the answers for the public. I think that's important.
Great point, George. And that's where people write in on
Absolutely.
info@hometowntv.org. That will get us. Beth, your thoughts?
And I think what I've learned, and quite frankly, a little disturbed by, is the idea that the county may be overseeing our schools, and we have very little influence, it seems, or individual influence with the county as we stand right now.
And I think in line with that, what we then need to do is our charter under access is both public and educational government, is to start getting out word to people on who their representatives are.
Absolutely.
At the assembly level for the four
if we're going to
counties
have a
and the Senate.
superintendent
Dave
at the county
Baumgart's
level,
freeholder.
There we go.
they want to put the county right on you,
Makes
Dave.
no matter, any party.
No labels. Okay. Thank you, Beth. David,
You can't, well, certain part.
your thoughts.
It doesn't matter the party. The freeholder candidate from the Western municipality has about this much chance of winning.
Right.
So but it would be nice, George. I'll put it back to you. No, I'm looking forward to the interviews that George and Lisa are going to be doing and hearing the information that you glean from the folks that you talk to, and then reconvening and talking about those results as a larger group.
Lisa, final thoughts?
Well, I learned that Dave is really good at pulling out quick numbers. And I've learned that we really need to understand the line by line. I think just talking here and understanding and not understanding exactly what's behind the numbers, and digging into that is, I've learned that I want to know more.
Excellent,
So
good.
looking forward to
So
it.
thanks to all. To our community and viewers and citizens, become knowledgeable. Again, ask questions, ask each other questions. Engage in a constructive conversation where we get to the facts of the matter, and then we come to decisions rather than taking positions beforehand. Please get involved in those discussions and tune in for our next segment. Thank you so much.